Welcome to class tonight. I do hope that you all are doing very well. Tonight we're going to be having a little unusual lesson because we are actually going to be working tonight. All that we're going to be doing tonight is creating what we call a spreadsheet. Now this should not be a new term because in tech class you should have already learned about this. If you have not, that's okay because we're going to cover it. But we're going to be talking about a program and learning about a program called Excel, or another way to say it is Spreadsheets. And now you say, wait a second, Mr. Why are we talking about a software program or a piece of software in math class? Well, actually this is going to be very helpful because a spreadsheet is designed to help us organize data. That's its job. Its job is to help us organize data, and that's what we've been talking about for this entire chapter. So we're going to be learning about this program. Now, Excel is really a great piece of software because we can take a really complex amount of data and display it and make sense of it pretty easily, actually. We first have to learn the technology, though. So let's go ahead and focus on that. So you see here, I just took a picture of what an Excel spreadsheet would look like. So this hopefully should be ringing some bells. And if not, that's okay too. So there are several terms that I want to cover first of all. Our first term is what we call a, let's see if I can show up. There we go. Our first term is what we call a row. Now a row is simply a horizontal box, or connected horizontal boxes right here. Now rows are always called a number. So you see right here, let me move this out of the way, how about that? So you see right there that that row is called row 3. So that's the first step. A row is simply a horizontal layer, well we can say, of boxes, or boxes that are connected horizontally. Next, we have what's called a column. Now, a column is a vertical row, or a vertical layer of boxes, one on top of the other. So we see a nice, vertical box right here. Now, these columns are actually called letters. Oh, that's horrible. These columns are actually named after letters. So once again, rows are named after numbers. Columns are named after letters. Now, the interesting thing is when we have, if I can click on it, there we go, where a row and a column intersect, we have what is called a cell. So right here, once again, the row right there, that's a row. Then we have a column, which is right there. And then finally, right where those two intersect, we have what's called a cell. Now, interestingly enough, cells are actually named after their column and their row. So this cell that we're pointing to right there, that cell that I'm pointing to, we would call that B3. The column is B and the row is 3. So we'd call this column, this cell right here, B3. Now, if we're going to do this box right there, okay, so one inside that, I would call that column is D. The row is, once again, 3. You change the color maybe to make that a little easier. So how about, let's pick another one outside this row. So let's do this box right there, that cell right there. So once again, I'm looking at the column, that's column D. And then now I'm going to look at the row, and the row is row 9. So this cell right there is what we call D9. So that is what a spreadsheet looks like. And this is what you would see on a normal spreadsheet. You'll always see columns, you'll always see rows, and then you will see cells inside those column and rows, and then you call them, or you name them this way. Alright, so you say, okay, Mr. Hurst, so we know what to name things. I don't see this helping me to organize and display data. Well, that's actually the next step in the process. The first step is understanding what a spreadsheet looks like. Now we're going to understand how to actually use a spreadsheet. Now this is a big key. We're actually going to get to a spreadsheet in just a minute. But this is a big idea. You may want to write this down somewhere, or write it on your practice sheet, or write it, or little highlight in your book, but just remember this. The equal sign tells a spreadsheet to do something. The equal sign tells a spreadsheet to do something. And you say, that makes no sense, Mr. Hurst. Well, let me help you out. So what happens, I'm going to go ahead and go back one right here, and I'm going to erase that part right there on purpose, because this right here, there's a little box right at the top of every spreadsheet. And inside that box, it's called the formula box, and inside that box you actually can put formulas and tell the spreadsheet to do something. So for example, let's go back to this right here. So for example, let's say I had numbers in this column right here, or sorry, this cell and this cell. So let's say I had 13 in this cell and 14 in that cell. So I would look at specifically the names, first of all, and then I'd look at an operation. So it looks something like this. So we have B12 and then C12. So I would go over my formula, and what I would do is I would type equal, and then I would write B12 plus C12. And then the spreadsheet will automatically add those two cells, and it would show you the answer. So you see, now this makes a little bit of sense. This could make my life really, really easy. Let's get into some other examples. So plus and minus, pretty easy. Multiplication and division, there's no, well, you don't use the X key if you want to multiply. There's actually a little star key, so it would look like this. B12 star C12. And that means B12 times C12. And then finally, division would look like this. B12 and then a slash C12. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, I've been talking about this all year long, how that is actually simple for division, and in a spreadsheet, that's how it works actually. So this is multiplication, addition, multiplication, and division, and subtraction is very easy. Now, you can actually also do some pretty complex things on a spreadsheet. I'm going to erase that on purpose. You can actually do things like find the mean or the average. You can do lots and lots of other things. We're going to talk about the mean specifically. So remember, the mean is simply adding all the terms together and then dividing it by the number of terms. So if I wanted, going back here, if I wanted to find the mean or average of those two cells, it would look something like this. B12 plus C12. Now here's where it gets a little, not tricky, you just have to be very careful. You would actually put this inside parentheses and then divide it by 2. They say, wait a second, what, Mr. Hurst? Well, let's break this down. Because remember, when we find the mean, we're adding the terms together. So I added the terms together, and then I'm dividing it by the number of terms. Now I put the parentheses in there to help the computer know what to do. The parentheses, just like in math, parentheses say, do this first, just like in order of operations, do this first. Well, the computer understands those rules and follows those rules. So it does that first, does what's inside the parentheses first, and then we'll divide by 2. And so this formula right here will actually give you the average of those cells. Now let's go ahead and put it into practice. I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet here. Now this will actually look very similar to the spreadsheet that you have on page 348. I would encourage you to go ahead and look at that. On page 348, it tells us about a room doing a canned food drive. And so these particular room numbers, I'm going to highlight these on purpose, these particular room numbers are collecting cans. So this information, well, this is the kind of the data. Just like this up here, this tells us what we're doing. This tells us the room numbers specifically in this chart. Now this next one says, in week 1, room 105 collected 389 cans. In week 2, it collected 416 cans. Same thing with 106, or room 106 and room 107. So this just gives us the data. Now we can actually use a spreadsheet to our advantage, because I can actually find the total very, very quickly and use this. So let me show you how this works. So up here, as I told you, a little box right up here, you're going to put the equal sign. Now I want to find the total number of those 2 weeks. So how many total cans did this room collect? So I'm going to put the equal sign, because the equal tells it to do something. Then I'm going to simply say, so that's C4, and you'll notice how it just got highlighted. That's a good thing. And I'm going to put a plus sign, oh, wrong, plus sign, D4. Now you see how it highlighted it actually? See, that was kind of cool. I enjoy doing that. So I'm going to be adding those two cells together. Hit enter and bam, I have my solution. And it's very, very simple. Let's do that one more time. Let's find the total number of cans collected for room 106. So once again, I'm going to put my equal sign. Then I'm going to put C5, you see it's highlighted, plus D5. And then enter, and once again. So finally, last time, I'm going to do it one more time. And there we go. So you see the exact same formula right there. Equals C6 plus D6. So I have the exact same formulas all right there. So that I just showed you how I can use my spreadsheet to make this very, very simple. Now, you'll notice I added something right here. Did that on purpose because on your homework, you're going to be asked to do this. You're going to be asked to find the mean or the average. And so what we're going to be doing is finding the mean or the average. Now, just like back here, I showed you we're going to use this formula, this idea right here. We're going to use that. So the mean, I want to find the average number of cans for room 105. Find the average number of cans. So let's go back here, and we are going to type in, so it's once again going to be equals, that tells us to do something, parentheses, then it's going to be C4 plus D4 parentheses. There we go. So once again, that tells it to do it first. Then I'm going to hit the slash 2, because remember there's 2 terms. So I'm going to add those together and then divide them by 2. I hit enter, and look at that. I have the average number of cans for this one. Let me do that one more time, make sure we understand this. So once again, so the average for room 106, I'm going to click on this cell, I'm going to put equals, then I'm going to put parentheses, that tells us to do it first, C5 plus D5, you see they're highlighted, parentheses, divide by 2. Enter, and bam, look at that. I have the average number of cans for those cans. Oop, didn't mean to do that. There we go. So, and I just did a little shortcut, and I see right here, C6 plus D6 divided by 2, and I found the average. So we see from this chart that clearly room 106 collected the most cans, and they definitely have the highest average of cans collected per week as well. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the basics. The keys tonight are going to be to remember these terms right here. So remember that horizontal, I'm going to erase this on purpose. Horizontal is what we call the row. Vertical is what we call the column. And then where those two meet, we call that a cell. So you got to remember those terms, and then we name them by simply taking the column letter and the row number and combining them. Then we can use it, spreadsheet, to do things by saying equal sign, that tells it to do something, and then we can add plus, then we can add, we can subtract, we can divide, or we can find the average, or many, many other things on our spreadsheet. Now in class, I'm going to actually show you some really cool things we can do with our spreadsheet. I have another sheet right here we're working on in class. You see I have a lot of data right there. We're going to be using this to create graphs and charts, and it really makes things very easy. Makes much of your life very easy. So I hope you're excited about learning about this. Well, that is your lesson. Your homework tonight is going to be page 348 and 349, 1 through 10 even. So really 2 through 10 even. Have a great night, and we'll see you all tomorrow.